What if I told you that Tish built her glamping dome debt-free, and in just 3 months, it's already fully booked with 5-star reviews? Sounds impossible, right? Well, today we're diving into exactly how she did it.
We didn't crunch our numbers, but I do have a roundabout of what we spent, and we're probably about.
So let's talk about the land that you're on. Why does it work? How did you know it was going to work? That tends to be the biggest struggle for people when they want to start a glamping site, is finding the right piece of property.
It wasn't easy. I think planning is very, very important. A lot of people don't know that me and Eric planned this journey for about a year while we lived in Florida before we got out here. During that time, we would take vacations. We did a lot of areas around here that helped us to get an idea of what we wanted. That's one thing I would say that helped us, was taking vacation in the area. Once we got here, our realtor didn't find this property. It was for sale by owner. Once we went to the property, we just stumbled on a sign and we ended up trespassing to look at it. I kind of realized that it had all the things we were going for. We definitely wanted a view. We were going to be in the mountains. I think that's a lot of the biggest mistake. A lot of people that want to go to the mountains or to a beach area is they don't get the beach or they don't get the mountain. You don't want to just be in the mountains to say it. You want to be able to have that view. So I was not going to settle for a property that didn't have a view. Once we saw that it had the view, bonus was the creek. Our entire property is lined with the creek. It's about 350 feet long. At its widest point, it's about 30 feet wide. So that's you can canoe down that creek. It had all those whimsical features that I know I wanted. I wanted something that was going to be kind of what me and Eric had when we came out here. We would come out here, it would just be the two of us. It was kind of like our little romantic getaway. Once we realized that that's what we wanted, to center around couples, then we knew we had to start looking for the secluded properties, the privacy. We had to look for that whimsical feature that you can go and take a little stroll at night and see the stars and that kind of stuff. Our property, I just chalk it up to, we were really blessed with this property. It's not unheard of. Anyone can do it, but you really have to be patient. You really have to not settle. I think that was the biggest thing. We saw so much properties with our realtor, and we could have bought any one of them. We went into this project, we planned really well, so we know it was going to be a cash project. So we came out here. We were able to raise 6 figures before we came out here to do this project. We knew that we didn't have to rush. We weren't on a loan that we had to close on or anything like that. So we just took our time and found the property. Like, also the fact that the previous owner, he kind of this vision for a camping, glamping kind of spot. So the property had electricity on there already. It had septic and it had a deeded spring. So we just lucked up. On top of that, we ended up putting into our land purchase the purchase of a Mini X and a little side-by-side, 4-wheeler, because it was hard to access the property in the beginning. So this was almost a ready-to-go property for us. Like, that's why I say that we're pretty blessed to be in this situation. It will not be that handed over to you. It was just right place, right time, right property to run up on. It had all the features what we were looking for. You definitely have to know who your guest is going to be. You have to cater to your guest.
God, I have so many questions. You guys are awesome. You knew that this project was going to be difficult to finance. And I'm guessing because you kind of already knew maybe the kind of structure you wanted to build, and that it was going to be difficult for a bank to finance that. We'll get into that in a little bit, but that was very smart of you to build up nest egg. How did you know that that particular property was going to work for what you wanted it to be able to do glamping, right? Because not every location, not every jurisdiction is going to allow glamping. So how did you know that it was going to work for that?
Well, the one cool thing was we have a lot of friends in the glamping community. We go to the glamping shows so we get to meet people. And we had a few pop up in our area right before we settled on what we were going to do. And so I like to say that I joke with one of my friends that they did the legwork for us. So they did all of the having to have the explain to the county and have them figure out what it is they were doing. So by having a few of these domes in the area already, they kind of already knew what they were working with. It was really easy. And on top of that, the previous owner kind of had the spots cut out. He didn't have it laid out the way we wanted to, but he kind of had a camper there already. So he was going to put a few campers. So he had camper spots there. And so he had the camper there. He had that spot laid out. He had the infrastructure in place for that area. So we just had to rework things a little bit. We knew that it was going to work for us, like I said, because we had, someone we knew had just put one up in the area, not too far from us. And so we knew we had guidance in that area. And then also utilizing the previous owner. Do not take that for granted, because when you come into these small towns and you know absolutely no one, our owner had, you know, he's probably in his 70s. He's been around forever. He knows everyone's children, where they went to school and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, or sometimes fortunately, in these areas, it's about who you know. And he knew a lot of people. And so he was able to have everything kind of laid out, and he actually held our hand and helped us a lot getting things that we needed to get done. We needed to upgrade some power, and he was able to call in a few people and get that done. And we just was smart enough to have these things done before we completely closed. Of course, we were paying cash, so he was really excited about that. He wanted to get out of it just because it was for him to reconnect with his sons, and they had their families, so they never came and visit. So he wanted to get out of it. We just utilized the fact that we had someone that had a vision, even though it was more family oriented, what he wanted to do. He had that vision of having a few spots on this land. He knew the people that we needed to contact for anything we needed done. For instance, our bridge, when we got there, was pretty dilapidated. We had to redo our bridge, and there's a video on our channel about that. Had an inspector come out and a guy come out, quoted us like $20,000 to do it, and he's like, oh, no, I'll show you guys someone else. So it was really having that too. So before you're so quick to close on something, utilize the previous owners. Find out as much information as you can from them. Allow them to do a little bit of the work before they just walk away and leave you with something that you're scratching your head on.
Absolutely. It's crazy how much of our stories are aligned, because I'm going through it right now. We're in the planning commission phase, but
Awesome.
Same thing. Seller is like practically like the mayor of that town, right? And knows everybody and has great relationships and is able to get a huge part of the process done for us before we even close on it. So
Awesome.
I absolutely,
Yes.
what you just said, like, it's worth it to wait for that right piece of property that not only has all the features you want, but it's going to have the right team in place, whether that's your realtor or in our case, like the owner, someone who's going to be that local guide, because, you know, there's a lot of details that have to happen in order to do something as simple as glamping. It's quite complex.
It's also funny because what you just said is so spot on, because even though we had them going up in our area, that's not to say that the person with the deed next to me or above me or behind me is going to be happy with that. So our previous owner was really instrumental in being able to introduce us to our neighbors on either side of us and got us very comfortable with them and stuff like that. So I think that's a big thing too. You can get into a community, or you can get into a county that is very glamping friendly, but you can get into a community that doesn't want it, and then they will still create problems for you. So you have to just wait for that. It has to feel right. We saw so many properties that had so many features I wanted, and I would go, Eric, just look at that house right there. I could see them looking down. I could see them not liking this. They already came out. They just heard a car pull up and they're already coming outside. I was a red flag. I don't want my guests to feel uncomfortable at all. And this thing couldn't fall in our laps better than it did.
That's awesome. And I think it just goes to show that when you have a vision and you stay true to it, the universe will align itself with you.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
absolutely.
Figure out what you want and stick to it, and it'll happen. It may not happen on your timeline, but it will happen. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you all.
Thank you.
So now we've talked about the land. So it sounds like there were a few things that went right for this particular property. One, you had that vision. You knew sort of the guest experience you wanted to create. You knew the guest avatar, like who you were serving and what they would want. And then, you know, you had this seller who was really incredible. So that's awesome. How did you choose what kind of structure to build? Because that's a whole other ball of wax.
So that one was a little bit more difficult because my naysayer was my partner. It was funny because I get Eric's point now that we talked about it. So I did this thing where, for one, because I know we were doing cash, I wanted to, we were thinking tiny homes. We were tiny home people. We full-time RV. And so we were thinking something along the lines of tiny homes on wheels and stuff like that. And I just happened to stumble. Just, you think something because your phone is like, I don't know, artificial intelligence now. You can think it and it pops up on your phone. And I just thought one day, I was like, I saw this thing, and all of a sudden I'm scrolling on Facebook, and now all I can see is domes. All I can see is domes. So I go down this rabbit hole, and because I know we wanted to be very budget friendly at the time, and mind you, me and Eric set out on this during COVID. Me being kind of put on a furlough from work, and Eric job slowing down because he's in that construction field, remodeling field. Of course, we couldn't go into homes and stuff like that anymore. So that slowed down, and we had a lot of time to sit down and talk and think about things. I one day told him, hey, look at these, these look really interesting. I'm from the Bahamas originally, so this kind of structure, a circular structure, is very common in my country. It just piqued my interest. But I was doing what most people that want to get into glamping is doing right now, and I'm going to tell you that this is not what you want to do. I was on Alibaba. I was on AliExpress. I was on every Chinese manufacturing company that you can think of. And I'm showing Eric, and I'm like, look at this. This one's only $6,000. And Eric's like, no, I don't like it. I don't like it. It kind of got to a point where we had to sit down. I'm like, what don't you like about this? He's like, babe, I had a detailing company. I've sold products before. I've ordered from China before. I know what this stuff is gonna come looking like. And I'm so mad. Fortunately for me, and most women, we kind of know how to get our way with our guys. So I just kept pushing and kept pushing. And finally, unbeknownst to me, and I always tell him he's a winner for this one, unbeknownst to me, he booked us a trip to Colorado to go to the USA Glamping and Tiny Home Show. That changed the game for us. It changed the game because not only that I know I had him on board, I knew that once we got there and we started to see the different structures and we was able to go in, I knew that we both were on the same page. And then we found True Domes. And this is where the story takes off for us, because we get no type of incentive from True Domes. We recommend them, highly recommend them, because we walked the glamping show. And we went into F Domes, and we went into Pacific Domes, and we went into True Domes. And my husband is a remodeler. You guys, I mean, you've seen our unit. I haven't posted the initial final product yet, but he's very picky. And when I tell you, this man was in these people places, turning stuff over, looking underneath stuff. And we realized that True Domes had everything we wanted. We didn't want to cheap out with this thing because we knew the potential profits. It's a very lucrative business. And so we went to the show. We talked about it that night. The next day, we approached True Domes about buying a dome from them. And they were like, well, hey, we're from the UK. It's a UK-based company. They flew over here and shipped the dome and had it, delivered here for the show. And so they're like, well, we don't want to have to pay for this one to go back. How about you guys buy the floor model? So when I tell you, it just blessings on blessings, we got a brand new dome that we were able to see this thing constructed. They were so helpful. They allowed us to come early that morning, help them take it apart. So by taking it apart, we kind of knew how to put it together. We were able to package this thing, touch this thing, see this thing, the actual one we were getting, put it in a van. And that's our crazy story, because we flew to the show on round trip tickets. We weren't expecting to buy anything. We spent about $2,000 renting a truck and driving from Colorado back to North Carolina with this dome. That's kind of how the structure thing came into play. Seeing is believing. And I highly encourage anyone that is thinking of doing glamping to get off the internet and get in your car, get on a bus, plane, train, whatever you have to do, and get out there and see the unit for yourself. There's a lot of good companies out there. I don't think it has to be True Domes. I've seen some F Domes and people are doing well with them. It just wasn't what we were looking for. And same with Pacific Domes. For us, it was literally our insulation kit. And I think unless someone has duplicated True Dome's insulation kit, we have the best, not only looking, but acting insulation kit in the business. And the reason I say that is because we're in a group of people that have domes or are getting domes. One of the biggest things we get from our friends that are already up and running, how do you stay warm? How do you stay cool? And my question is, how do you don't? Like, we don't have that issue. So I don't know how to answer that. You know, common sense tells me it's our insulation kit. On our channel, we do have the video of when we were doing the insulation kit, and my handy husband decided that we were going to get huge rolls of Reflectix, and we kind of just cut out pieces of the insulation kit. We kind of traced it, because that's one thing about True Domes is our insulation kit came in pieces. So there was about maybe,
it's not
I
one
want to say,
big
it's not
continuous
this
thing.
big sheet looking structure that you need 10 people to put it up. They were, the longest one I would say would have been about 20 feet or so. They were in pieces, and so it made it really easy to trace the piece with Reflectix to double that insulation, and we just put it right behind that
Oh.
insulation piece. Insulation is a big thing.
No, that's awesome. So it sounds like you, again, like you were really thoughtful before you committed to really any part of this process. And you became part of a community. You got to see a lot of different options and try them out. And then that was, ultimately how you landed on that. So it's, again, very similar. Like, we stayed in a dome as well. We actually bought Pacific domes. We have one with the insulation kit. We haven't put it up yet, but now I'm like, I might tell him, like, we may need to go to check out these True Domes, because I love that you can add additional insulation, and it sounds like it's not super difficult to do. So
if you haven't seen the video, you kind of have to. Not only that, browsing through our pictures, you can just see the difference. I mean, it may seem so funny, like I'm going on and on about an insulation kit. If you're in the glamping business, then you realize that your insulation kit is your interior walls.
Yep.
Like, it is your interior wall. So what do you want your guests staring at when they're laying down for hours and hours? And I say that because our guests do not leave our dome. So what do you want them staring at? A saggy sheet structure that seems like it's like coming down on them. Our insulation, I call it microfiber. That's the closest feel and look that I can give on their website. It's a jute. It's called a jute material. I'm not familiar with that, but for me, to the touch and the look of it, it looks like microfiber. It is very thick. It has a built-in Reflectix on the underside of it. On top of that, we added another layer of Reflectix on there. We are totally just airproof, soundproof. We don't get any complaints. So when you're looking at a dome, your insulation is going to matter, because it is essentially your entire interior wall. I love the fact that True Domes, the one that they brought to the glamping show that we bought, the insulation kit was gray. So that was totally our style. It was totally just something different. All the domes we saw was white on the inside, and we're already white on the outside. That just added a kind of design feature for me, because that's where I come in this project. I did a lot of designing for Lazy Boy back in Florida. For me, that was an extra design feature.
Okay, that's really awesome. I'm so going to have to check these out. All right, so we've got the land, we've got the structure. Let's talk about your permitting and your construction process. What was that?
So for us, like I said, again, permitting was not hard for us, only because we utilized our previous owner a lot, and he kind of like took us into the office. This is what he had going on. This is kind of what we're planning on doing. And because I don't know if because it was so similar to what he was already doing with but instead of having a camper, we were going to have a dome. So he had a deck permit. Of course, we had to update that because our deck was a little bit different. We had to do some more, what is that called? Plowing and grading and stuff like that to get it to the slope and everything they wanted. So our biggest things with our county, this is the thing, Laura, and I know you do a lot of Airbnb stuff. I know it's so hard to give like permitting advice because I get it so much in my comments. I try to not egg people on in a way to make them think that it is so easy, because it is solely, and I know they're tired of hearing, it is dependent on your county. People think you're being a gatekeeper when you say that. They think you don't know what you're talking about when you say that. It varies from not only state to state and city to city, but county to county. It could even get as lower town to town, street to street, if you really want to look at it that way. And so for us, we kind of went in with him just explaining that this is what he was doing. We want the same amount of spots because he had 3 spots on the property. We were going to utilize those same 3 spots. We were just going to use it for a different use. And so the biggest thing for us was our deck. Once we got the deck permitted, as far as the structure, there was not a lot to do with that. It was fairly easy.
Okay. So he had a site plan already.
Yes.
And he had deck plans and you just modified those. So did you permit as a single family house? Like what type of permit did you need for the actual structure? Or did you need special use permit?
So that's more Eric, and I kind of wish he was here for that one. I want to say we did the single family dwelling. I want to say we did that because I remember it being camping at first because that's kind of what he was going to do. The guy was going to do more camping. So he's going to have to hook up, like I have it in my background. I'm looking at it. He had the spigot and the like if you go camping, the setup is what he had on all 3 spots. I know that they said we had to run different wiring and stuff than what he had laid out. So I want to say it was single family dwelling because the permitting that we had to do to we have to upgrade from his camping and upgrade the power, upgrade the wires. I think it was like I'm bad with those. I want to say 110 or whatever it was, and we had to upgrade the power line.
Okay. So if you didn't have to go before like a planning commission or anything like that, it does sound like you were able to just do a single family dwelling, which is the way you want to go if the county will allow you. But as you just finished saying, it's not going to be the same county to county. So it's really going to depend on your location, which is why you want to do all of that due diligence that Tish talked about before you commit to the land, because the last thing you want to do is buy something that you can't use for your purpose. So
absolutely.
Be intentional. Now that you're here, you've got this amazing dome, and there will be throughout this video images of just how beautiful you guys have done an amazing job with it. But now that you've got it, what advice do you have for beginners, and what are your future plans?
Ooh, I will say future plans first. Future plans, like I said previously, this property was set up for 3 I say tiny home spots, but they were essentially 3 camping, glamping spots is what he had them set up for. We're not going to utilize all 3 of them. We did leave one as a camping spot because, like I said, we full-time RV. For any given reason, if we wanted to camp out over there, or we even thought about having more vintage campers or truck campers that would be able to get in and out the property without too much noise and ruckus, we would rent that out to on a hip camp, or we even thought about putting an Airstream down there because we have a camper spot. So our property is shaped like a horseshoe. It's a U, but it's a U that goes up to the top of the mountain. The spots are so perfect because you come in and then there's like the creek all along, and then there's one spot right on the creek, and that's the RV spot. As you go up around that bend, you come to a second spot, and as you go up the mountain, you would go to the dome. When you're at the dome, you can't see any of the other spots. And when you're at the other spots, you can't see. That's just the way the property is cut. I tell you, we're just blessed with this thing. We have a second spot that we worked on while we were working on the dome, running all of that while we had all that power and stuff ran. We ran it to this spot. And so we're going to put a tiny home on wheels on that spot. And that's going to also be an Airbnb. And so I like to say this property is one property, 2 acres with 3 income producing possibilities. We have the RV spot. We have the tiny home spot. I'm going to be doing a video really soon because I was really excited to announce that we had Incredible Tiny Homes building this tiny home. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They have a big channel on YouTube, and their tiny homes are awesome. Wow, they have delayed us so much that my excitement is now like down, but we're waiting on that. And also in the process, we are searching for our next property. The vision was always to cash out of our houses. I owned my own house. My husband had his own house. We lived in the same area. We happened to get real smart during that Florida boom that we had during the pandemic. You could just list a price and you can get it. And we did just that. And we walked away from both of those houses really set for this project in cash. And so we set the first property up. We're waiting on that second tiny home. That third spot's going to be for just kind of some hip camp stuff with campers, smaller campers. Right now, we are in the process of looking for another property to essentially do it again, to duplicate the success, hopefully, that we've had before.
That's great. I really can't wait to see all of your growth and your evolution. Before we end, I do have a couple more things. People often they don't know how much a venture like this is going to cost, and of course, it is going to be project by project. But in general, what should people expect in terms of cost to put up something like a dome on a deck on a piece of property?
This is a really interesting question because we've had the luxury of hosting a few guests that actually their intention is that this is what they want to do. And so they have booked our dome to kind of one, just get introduced to us and be able to answer some questions for them and to see how it was kind of like what we did when we went to the other domes. And I had a guy on the phone the other day. I don't think he was ready for what I was about to tell him price wise. I think people are very clueless a little bit as to what I know you think glamping and then they think tents and deck and it seems so just easy and cheap to do. And it really is not. I talked to Eric about this. We didn't crunch our numbers, and the reason we have not crunched our numbers to the T is because, well, I didn't want to see how much money we were spending. I didn't want to see it as it was happening, but I do have a roundabout of what we spent, and we're probably about $125,000 into our project. Now, that does include our land, but again, our land was for sale by owner. We had no lawyer fees and or real estate fees involved, so we got a really good deal on that. And if I had to take out the land, it would have been about $50,000 was about our land. Now, that does include the Mini X and the side-by-side that we purchased with the property. The property itself, we paid $40,000 for, and I think $40,000. We were lucky. Again, this was right kind of off of COVID. And so this guy wanted to get out of this property. He's an older guy. It kind of freaked him out, COVID. It just wasn't happening for him what he wanted it for. You couldn't beat the price. $40,000 with electricity, with a septic.
And the septic.
Our septic was already in place. We had a 3-bedroom septic already in place. And the property has a deeded well. Well, deeded spring. I'm sorry. We have a spring. So the spring was deeded to about 8 houses in the area. Everyone since has went on to a well. So we're the last remaining deeded to an 8-house spring. And there's a video on my channel. It's always a video, but there's a video. I don't know if I put it up yet, but I'm working on the final spring video. Eric is so innovative that he went in and redid this spring. Like we had to restructure and do a lot of things. It wasn't in use for a little while. The guy still had it kind of watering. He had some goats and stuff like that, so he still used it a little bit. But for what we needed it for, we had to totally reconstruct our spring. And so that's another thing that was a really push for this property because we don't have a water bill. And you're talking 2 structures. We have a hot tub at the dome. We're going to have a hot tub at the tiny home. That's a lot of water. So to have that as not being an expense was just like a no-brainer for us. Yeah, we got really lucky.
I hope that the viewers of this video understand how amazing everything that you just talked about is. Like, that does not happen where you get a property that already has a site plan, that already has deck engineering plans, already has septic, has some form of electrical.
You have to have a bridge to get into our property because our creek is, like I said, about 30 foot wide. So you had to have a bridge to get over the property. We had to redo the decking, but the I-beams was already engineered into the bank and into the roadway. Because I remember when we got it, they were like, you have to go to highway safety and blah, 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 you know, to redo the bridge. Okay. So we went there and they came out. There's a video on my channel, I think, with them there. They came out and they were like, your I-beams are good. You're into the roadway. You're into the bank. You just need decking. We can do that. Like, we can do that ourselves. We thought, we had a guy come out that charged us $20,000 for our bridge. We were like, what? Like, no, that was not budgeted for the bridge. This was before we had the highway, whatever, safety people coming. I think, matter of fact, it was the Navy Engineer Corps or something is who you deal with over here. And so they were like, oh no, like your only deal with us is if you have to kind of weld into our roadway. Because half of the bridge touches our property, half of it is into the roadway. And because there was already the plans and they had this, it was already done, permitted and everything, the I-beams were already underneath the roadway. We just had to lay decking. It spoiled us though. It spoiled us because now we're
Yeah.
looking for our second property, and I say no to everything. They don't have a septic. Oh no. They don't have power. Oh no. It's not 40 grand.
Yeah.
No.
You might have to come back down to reality with the
Yeah.
rest of us.
Yes. Yeah.
That is amazing. That is just such a true blessing
Yeah.
to do it, especially for your first one, because you don't quite know what you're getting into.
You can go in debt free if you plan properly. And a lot of people go, how did you raise money that, 6 figures for this project? We sold something we realized we didn't need. We bought a camper. We have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath camper. We live very, very fine in it. It allows us to be able to go to these areas, camp out at a camp spot for a night or two, see how the area is. It allowed us to be able to fund this dream. And the one thing I remember me and Eric saying was, you know what we could get again? Jobs. And you know what's easy to get after that? A house. So we
Right.
weren't, I think a lot of people have this American dream aspect, like you get the house, like you don't sell your house. I would get another house and sell it again if I could make a profit, because that's how you get your money
Yeah.
to fund your dreams. It's very easy to
Mhm.
get a job, be there for 2 years, and get a bank loan and a house. So that was my thought process going into this. And so I just wanted to share something with anyone out there, because I always say our channel is not a DIY channel. It's more of a, if we can do it, you can do it too channel. And so I just wanted to share with people. A lot of people get really stumped when they hear you spent $125,000, but they don't realize that they're sitting on $125,000, sometimes in their homes, equity in properties, estates that was left to them that they're doing nothing with, that expensive car that you don't need. So we downsized a lot. I sold like down to clothes. We had a yard sale to get rid of the stuff in our house. We left nothing unturned. We sold the furniture, and that's how it was funded. And so I just want people to realize it's realistic. We were regular people. I had a 3-bedroom house. Eric had a 4-bedroom house. That's some people's lives right now. Some people that are partners, dating, maybe engaged, even maybe married, that someone still has a house somewhere, maybe rental property. And so I just want it to be said that it's very attainable for the average American that have a decent job and may have some kind of asset. It's very easy to cash out of those assets or even refinance those assets to get into this business. And so that'll be my final take for anyone that may watch this and think, oh, well, they raised 6 figures. When I say raise, I don't mean we had like a capital fund or we put up like a GoFundMe. I mean, we sat down, we made the decision to cut out some stuff, and I had 2 cars and Eric had 2 cars, and I sold one that I didn't need and he did, and we sold the houses and we've got an RV. So it's very, very attainable if you're willing to make the sacrifices. And that's the biggest thing that people are not willing to do. And that's why a lot of them never come to fruition, because they can't make the sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah. You made a way, right? You made a way out of no way, and now you're living your dream. So this has been a great conversation. I know that folks are going to get a ton out of this. I got a ton out of this. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and I really cannot wait to see what is next for you guys and following your journey.